how writing journey began. And she's almost finished writing this. She's finished with the next story, which I've saved to that. She'll listen.
Welcome again.
Hi.
Shwetha, thank you so much for doing this with us.
It's my pleasure.
We'd love to know about you, from you, what do you do, and then I'll move on to why we want to have you here.
Okay, so just to give you a little backdrop about myself, by profession I'm a tax consultant. I used to work with EY, and my life took this whole detour after my older daughter Aditi was born. Aditi is 19 now, but when she was around 3 years old, she was diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum, and she was somebody with significant speech delays. And back at that point of time, the awareness level about autism in the Indian society was not as much as it is now. I mean, internet was there, and obviously Bangalore was one of the better places even back then in terms of access to therapies, in terms of access to schools, in terms of access to resources. Yet I don't think it was at the level at which it is now. So, as a young parent, for us we were fairly clueless about what to do with our child, right? So that's when I kind of decided to take a step back from my career, because one of us, and my husband's job involved a lot of travel. So one of us had to really give her a lot of time. And more than giving her a lot of time, I think, spend time understanding what to do with her. So that's how the whole journey began. And once I started to learn more about autism, once I started to learn about, how to work with my own daughter, I realized this is something I wanted to do. So that's when I decided to do a course in special education, and I started working with other autistic children. And for almost 13 years, over 12 years, I've worked with autistic children, I've worked with autistic teens in different capacities. I've taught them. I've managed a learning center for children with differential needs, including autistic children. And these days I basically run a podcast for young parents who, whose children have just been diagnosed as being on the spectrum. So I'm a part of this initiative called Not That Different, which is run by Bookosmia, which is basically a publisher for under 18-year-olds. And through our initiative, one of the things that we want to do, of course, is to spread awareness among the neurotypical, basically the normal children, about children who are different. This neurodivergence can be anything. It can be autism, it can be ADHD, it can be dyslexia, it can be anything. Now, oftentimes, given our environment in which we function, right, our Indian education system is not exactly ready for being very inclusive to children of differential needs. So oftentimes what happens is most neurotypical children, they are not very aware about children with differential needs. And this happens all the more when we talk of invisible disabilities. Now, autism doesn't have a look. ADHD doesn't have a look. Dyslexia doesn't have a look. So what comes with this is a lot of misunderstanding. A lot of things like maybe he's doing it because he wants to be willfully rude, or maybe she's doing it because she loves to tantrum, or she's just being very lazy. That's not what it is, right? It's a disorder. It's a inherent disorder which is not seen on the face. So oftentimes a lot of children themselves don't understand why this is happening. Parents don't have answers for this. They are not comfortable, answering difficult questions. So through our initiatives, we want to bring that conversation out, because I think understanding is very key to acceptance, and children are a lot more non-judgmental and come from a space of lack of conditioning than we adults are, right? So their questions, come from a space of curiosity, and when they find an answer to it, that's all it is. I mean, if there are 5 kids playing in the playground and one of them is autistic, they will throw sand on each other. It doesn't matter whether the kid is autistic or not. They'll fight with each other, and after 5 minutes they'll be fine. That's all it is. So that's the space from which kids come from. So Not That Different is basically an initiative that aims to bring these conversations out in our own little way, create an environment that's a little more inclusive, basically around a lot of social inclusion. So that's what I'm doing these days.
Amazing. Thank you for actually choosing that path, being in a corporate world, accepting what your child has been diagnosed with, taking it positively and moving ahead is amazing. It doesn't come very easily to a lot of people, and it's great that you're able to do it and create that awareness for a lot of others as well, right? I want to take you back a little to know how this journey started. So I want to know, what was your state of mind when you got to know that your child is autistic. First, you were a first parent. I mean,
Yes.
first
Yeah,
mom at
Aditi
that
is my
time,
older
right?
daughter.
First
Yes,
child.
yes.
So you must have had a lot of things running in your mind. What were those emotions, your thoughts? What did you feel and experience at that point in time when you got to know that she's autistic?
Okay, just to kind of take things back a little. So the first red flag that I noticed in Aditi was the lack of speech. So, by 13 months, most children, they start to babble, they start saying two-letter words. In fact, my younger one started speaking full sentences when she was 11 months old. So, she would babble a few things, and then there would be a phase when she would forget whatever she said, literally, so to say. There would be a period when she wouldn't say what she was saying anymore. And then there would be a period when she would say a few things, and then it went back to that. And apart from that, she had, a lot of sensory differences. We'll come to the part when we talk about what typically are red flags of autism, right? So she experienced world a little differently, so which made her react to, very commonplace things very differently. Like, for instance, it was very difficult even in winter for her to wear woolen clothing, because she couldn't like the sensation. She wouldn't like the sensation of woolen on her skin. She wouldn't like it when we went to malls, when we went to crowded places, noisy places, which we eventually realized was because of her autism. And because of the sensory differences that autism entails. She would just start bawling her head off the minute we sit in the car. And the minute we come back home, it would stop. It's like somebody's turned a switch on. It goes on and on and on and on and on. And then, it gets turned off the minute the car enters our house gate again. So that's how it was. Those were a few things that were concerning when she was 13 months old, and largely the lack of speech, which is why I went to a very reputed development pediatrician, whose name I don't want to take, at that point of time. And she was the only one who had this, she was a pioneer of sorts in this space. And she gave us a misdiagnosis. So, Aditi was somebody and she still is somebody with a lot of anxiety. So, when we went to her, Aditi obviously was somebody who knew, the difference between home and outside from the time she was 2 months old. So, she realized I'm in a place that is new, and because of her anxiety, because of her sensory differences, she ended up stiffening herself up. And this doctor tried to examine her. And out of protest, she just completely stiffened herself and started screaming and refused to, yelling loudly on top of her voice. And she just refused to let her, examine her. And in a matter of few seconds, without running any diagnosis, without running any tests, the doctor declares your daughter has cerebral palsy. And we were in for a complete shock. We were young parents. And I wasn't willing to believe that it was cerebral palsy. I wasn't willing to believe that she had that stiffness anywhere in her body. Luckily, our pediatrician was somebody, he's no more. He was a very experienced person, Dr. Gopal Krishnamurthy. So I took this diagnosis back to my pediatrician, and he said, I'm not saying there is nothing. There could be something, maybe there is nothing, but whatever it is, it's clearly not cerebral palsy. That much I can tell you, right? Obviously, this doctor has been in a very big hurry to misdiagnose. She's not run any diagnostics, so how did she even come up with this diagnosis? What I suggest is that you start working with your child in terms of, sitting down and trying to have a conversation with your child. How do you have a conversation with a 13 or a 14-month-old? Show small picture books, point to objects, talk to her about objects, basically stimulate expression in her. Work for another year. Let's see where it goes. If, she still has delays, and if she's still not talking, come back. I'll refer you to another person for a diagnosis. So now, what happened was we started to do it, but few months down the lane, I think 3 or 4 months down the lane, we had to relocate to Chennai for my husband's job. And that was an adventure of sorts, because Aditi couldn't get used to the weather. And sadly, the year we relocated was also the year I think they had their most drastic summer since 1940 something. So, she was always sick. She was always getting these, upset tummies, and she wouldn't want to eat. And I mean, it was a misadventure of sorts. But still, round her second birthday, it kind of kept, it was there at the back of my mind that she's not talking, and clearly, something's not okay. So we went to Mehta's Children's Hospital there. There was a Dr. Gyanabalan there who, we did take Aditi there, and he ran a few initial diagnoses, and he said this could be autism. So, but you kind of, need to bring her back for proper diagnosis and therapies and stuff like that, which really didn't happen because, she couldn't get used to the weather, she couldn't get used to the place. So, about 10, 11 months since, we relocated back to Bangalore. But by then we kind of knew, yes, this is autism. But once we were back in Bangalore, she was a little less than 3 years old, is when we took her, to a pediatric neurologist here, who gave her a formal diagnosis, and that's when we started working. So it was quite a journey, yes. Obviously, as a young parent, and I'm talking about 2007, 2008, when in India the awareness about autism was much lesser. I mean, people knew intellectual disabilities, people knew cerebral palsy, people knew Down syndrome, right? People didn't know autism. So people would try to, and this was very important because, in terms of therapies, it's very important in terms of the kind of educational program you put your child through. It's very different, right? Bangalore obviously was always one of the better places. I mean, there was access to therapies and stuff, but it really wasn't, the level at which it is now. So as a parent, as a young parent, your first reaction is, why me, why my child, right? That's your first. And then you hear all about, this early intervention, the phase between the time a child is 2.5 years old till the time a child is 6 years old, right, is when the brain growth is supposed to be the most. So what early interventionists believe is that when you introduce a child to a lot of different therapies, a lot of different experiences, basically, certain synapses in your brain, it connects sooner, so a child can overcome some of their difficulties better, which is why early intervention is important. So there's this whole rush to get your child skilled up in the face of early intervention, right? So obviously that happened. But I think what a lot of people, and even to this day it happens, is that, people don't realize autism is not a disease. It's a disorder. Okay, so put simply, it's just a difference in the way your brain is wired. That's all, right? So if it is a disease, you can find a cure. But if that is who you are, that's how nature has created you, and that's how you're born, see, all that you can do is, one, work around some of your difficulties, two, get certain accommodations, or, learn to do things differently so that you're able to learn to the best of your ability and live to the best of your ability. There is nothing called cure, because there is no disease here, right? But oftentimes when people, therapists and professionals, they talk of early intervention, I think the expectation that's created in a parent's mind is that if I do this, my child is going to be okay. If my child starts talking, she's going to be okay, which is a big fallacy in autism land, because as far as autistics are concerned, speech and communication are two very different things, right? So a child can learn to speak, but the child may still not be able to communicate, and that is a very real reality in autism land. But oftentimes your lot of your initial efforts goes in trying to get your child skilled up, right? But it's a journey. I think, like I told you, right? Initially, we were quite clueless. Aditi was 3.5. We started her off in a play school near our house, and she was somebody with a lot of separation anxiety, so she would just cry and cry and cry in school. And that was the time I kind of went up to the internet, read up about autism, and one of the things that it said was, autistics thrive in structure. But what kind of structure? Now, unless you understand autism, you wouldn't understand what that is, right? So, for us, what's the first thought that comes to our mind when we say structure? Formal schools. So, we did that. We went and put Aditi in a formal school. For her, the admission was a cakewalk. She started off at Kumarans, which is like a typical formal school, some 30, 35 kids in the class, even in nursery with 2 teachers, and it was a complete disaster. Every single day she would cry, she wouldn't be able to get adjusted to the class. But I think what happened there also was, the coordinator of that school, back then she's no more, her name was Bhavani Chandrasekharan, was somebody who's very aware about autism. So she was somebody who put us across to Comdale Trust, which is one of the pioneers in the space of working with autistic children. So basically they work around teaching them to communicate, they work around working around some of their sensory difficulties so that they're able to, do some of the things better, like it can even be, learning to wear different kind of clothes, being able to tolerate the texture of different kind of clothes, being able to eat different kind of food. A lot of that also children have to undergo therapy to be able to get there. So so we went to Comdale Trust, and she was also, she also guided us to the small learning center, a Montessori learning center, which is an inclusive center. So they have about 50 children, and they used to take 1 or 2 children with differential needs out of the 50. So once Aditi moved to that center, she settled in very nicely into the school system, and some of the therapies slowly started to work. But having said that, I think the whole understanding that you're in this for a long run, it's not 2 years, it's not 5 years, it's not 10 years, you're in this for a lifetime, comes only with time. It doesn't come on day one, it doesn't come on year one, it doesn't come in year two, year three also. But I think as what helped for me was that I got to work with a lot of other autistic children. Now, autism is a very wide spectrum, right? Children can be anywhere on the spectrum. So, just to give you an example, Steve Jobs is autistic. Okay, Mark Zuckerberg is autistic. Elon Musk is autistic. Now, what is it about them that you think is different that, that they are autistic? So, people can be like that and be autistic, right? And then that is called as mild autism. Now, there is something called as moderate autism, which is what my daughter has. So, these are children with communication differences, sensory, slightly more pronounced sensory differences. So, they would obviously require a different way of working, a different way of learning. So, they are able to learn and function to the best of their abilities. But with support, they can learn and function to the best of their abilities. Now, apart from this, there is a small category called severe autism. Now, those with severe autism are children who will need support all their lives. They will not be able to necessarily communicate even with AAC, and they will have a lot of, what is called as comorbidity. So it's not just autism. See, autism is not a disease, it's just a way of being. But many children have other comorbidities, like, they have epilepsy, they have very severe gut issues, they have autoimmune disorders, all of which kind of gets, way too much, and which makes them fairly dysregulated, which is why, for them to learn and live to the best of their capability, they require extensive support throughout their lives. So there is that category also, right? See, autism is such a wide spectrum. Now the child, there is Steve Jobs on one end, and there is somebody who requires care for the rest of their lives on the other end, right? And there are majority are in between. So, so yes, the understanding that this is something so huge, your child is somewhere in between. What is it that you have to do to make things work for your child, and how do you take the program forward? Because as a society, I don't think our schools are, ready for being inclusive. At best, they may take, a miniature Steve Jobs and give a few accommodations because, the child is brilliant. You just have to accommodate for a few things and, the job is done. But beyond that, I don't think we have the ability to, kind of truly include children with differential needs in our school system. So what really happens is that the onus is on the parents, to figure out what program works for your child, what kind of school your child needs to go to. Having gone to this kind of school, what are the supports you need to give at home so that your child is learning, and what kind of job options are there. Is your child fine? You've done all of this and you've sent your child to school, your child is learning something. Are they useful skills? Are they skills that translate into meaningful adulthood as they go into their teens? And if not, what is it that you have to do? How do you what are the kind of skills that may work for them? Customized employment. Can your child can the young adult go to office and work every day? Can somebody with so many communication differences and social challenges go to work every day? So are you saying you want them to work from home? What kind of jobs do you think? Do you have to customize employments? So it's like literally the onus is on the parent to figure out end to end what to do with your child. So yes, I mean, it is a journey. It's a journey of acceptance, and we tell this to young parents all the time, right? Accept, accept, accept. But the acceptance will take its time coming. It's not, okay, fine, my child is dying.
Saying that,
yes,
right?
exactly.